Welcome to Sleepy Travel Dailies, where each night we take a slow, gentle journey to someplace quiet, beautiful, and far away. A place where time slows down and the world softens around you. Tonight, I'll take you on a peaceful drift through the heart of Yosemite Valley, a land of towering granite cliffs, glowing rivers, and endless skies that whisper with light. It's a place where daylight lingers like a memory, and dusk arrives not as an ending, but as a soft invitation to rest. In this story, we'll wander through silent forests and follow the hush of the Merced River as it carries our reflections through the last colors of evening. You'll hear the faint rustle of pine needles, the distant song of water falling over stone, and the low hum of twilight. That moment when the world seems half awake, half dreaming. So settle in, take a deep breath, and as you listen, allow each word to carry you a little further away from the noise of the day. You don't have to do anything now. Just rest and let your imagination wander. This is Drifting Through Yosemite Valley at Dusk. It was late afternoon when I first arrived at Yosemite Valley. The air was still warm from the day, but already beginning to cool, like a sigh that drifts through the trees just before evening settles in. The road curved gently through open meadows, lined with golden grass that shimmered in the low light. Beyond them rose the cliffs, vast, ancient walls of granite, etched with shadows and sunlight. They seemed alive somehow, as if they had been watching travelers for centuries, quietly keeping their stories. I rolled down the window of the old van I'd rented for the trip, and a soft, pine-scented breeze moved through. It carried the faint sound of water, the river somewhere close, and the slow rustle of branches swaying overhead. There was no rush here. Everything moved at its own unhurried rhythm. As I reached the valley floor, the light deepened to a golden amber, and a kind of hush filled the air. Even the birds seemed to quiet down, their calls fading into the wide stillness of dusk. Somewhere far above, a hawk circled in widening rings, its wings glowing faintly in the sun's last rays. I parked by a small turnout and stepped out onto the gravel. The ground was cool beneath my shoes, and the scent of earth and river moss surrounded me. Ahead, the Merced River moved in silver ribbons, curving lazily through the meadow. Its surface caught the sky like glass, reflecting the fading orange of the horizon and the first pale glimmers of evening stars. There was a wooden bench nearby, half hidden under a tall cedar. I sat down, feeling the gentle ache in my legs from the drive, and let the silence unfold around me. Somewhere behind me, a camper shut their car door. A soft click that echoed faintly, then was gone. The rest of the world felt miles away. It's strange, I thought, how the quiet of a place can draw out your own quiet too. Thoughts that once seemed loud begin to drift like clouds, slowly dissolving until only stillness remains. A small breeze rippled across the river's surface, and the reflection of the cliffs began to waver, as though the world itself was breathing. The shadows grew longer, stretching across the meadow like gentle brushstrokes. And for a moment, I simply sat there, listening to the soft murmur of water and the faint whisper of leaves above. In that hour between day and night, time felt suspended. The valley was both awake and dreaming, alive with color, yet already folding itself into sleep. I took out my small journal, the one I carried on every trip, and wrote just a few words. Arrived at dusk. Everything feels sacred here. The ink bled slightly on the page as a cool wind swept in. I smiled, closed the notebook, and leaned back against the bench. Somewhere in the distance, the faint echo of a waterfall rolled through the air, low and steady, like the heartbeat of the valley itself. I closed my eyes and listened. The sound rose and fell, filling the quiet space around me, until it felt less like something I was hearing and more like something I was part of. Above the cliffs, the last light faded, and dusk began its slow descent. When I opened my eyes again, the light had softened completely. The world had turned to shades of silver and blue, the sun's glow now only a faint blush behind the distant cliffs. It was the hour when day exhales and night begins to breathe. The first stars trembled faintly in the sky, tiny lights that seemed impossibly far away, and yet somehow near enough to touch. I stood up from the bench, my movements slow and unhurried, as though not to disturb the peace that had settled all around. The air was cool now, cool enough that I pulled my jacket close and began walking down the narrow trail that followed the river. The ground beneath me was soft with pine needles, each step making a muted sound, a rhythm that soon matched the quiet current of the water beside me. The Merced River glimmered under the twilight, its surface rippling with the last reflections of fading light. Every now and then, a fish broke through the surface with a soft splash, sending out circles that shimmered like tiny silver rings. Somewhere upstream, I could hear the murmur of a small cascade, its voice calm and steady, as if telling an old story to the stones. The trail curved deeper into the trees. Tall cedars and ponderosa pines rose around me, their trunks dark and straight as pillars. Between them, patches of sky appeared, small windows of stars that seemed to shift and multiply with every few steps I took. The scent of pine and cool earth filled the air. There was something ancient in that smell, a reminder that this place had existed long before names or maps or cameras. I felt a quiet awe rising inside me, the kind that humbles and soothes at the same time. After a while, I came to a small wooden bridge. It arched gently over the water, its planks creaking softly beneath my feet. I paused in the middle and leaned against the railing, watching the current move beneath. Here, the river was narrow, the kind of narrow that made it feel personal, as if you could speak to it and it might answer back. The moon, just rising beyond the treetops, cast a ribbon of silver across the surface. It looked like a path, a road of light leading deeper into the valley. For a moment, I imagined following it, not walking, not even floating, but simply drifting along, carried by the current and the quiet. Every so often, I'd pass a stone or a fallen branch, but nothing would disturb the stillness. Just the soft hum of water, the murmur of the earth, and the hush of night unfolding around me. Somewhere nearby, an owl called, low and slow, its sound echoing softly through the trees. It felt less like a cry and more like a greeting, a small welcome from the valley's nocturnal world. I smiled and whispered back, though I wasn't sure what words I said. Maybe it wasn't words at all, just a quiet breath in the cool night air. I continued along the trail until it opened again into a meadow. The grass shimmered faintly in the moonlight, and the granite walls of the valley rose in ghostly majesty around me. I recognized the great shape of El Capitan, its sheer face catching the pale light like a silver mirror. Even in darkness, it seemed to glow, steady and eternal. I lay down in the soft grass, resting my head on my hands. The earth was cool beneath me, and the faint hum of crickets filled the silence. Above, the stars had multiplied, 1,000 delicate fires burning across the sky. There was something deeply comforting in that vastness, the reminder that we are small, yet part of something endless. That no matter how far we wander, the same stars follow us home. The night deepened. I closed my eyes for a moment and felt the ground pulse softly beneath me, as if the valley itself were breathing. Each inhale brought the scent of pine and stone. Each exhale carried away the remnants of thought. The sound of the river nearby became a lullaby, steady, ancient, and kind. I let it guide me deeper into stillness, until my body felt weightless, my mind loose and unhurried, like water flowing around smooth stones. It was then I realized the journey wasn't about distance anymore. It was about drifting, letting go, letting the valley carry me where it wished. And so I lay there, half dreaming, half awake, beneath the vast and whispering sky. The world, for a long and gentle moment, felt perfectly still. I must have drifted in and out of a light, waking dream. When I opened my eyes again, the meadow had changed. A veil of mist now hovered low across the grass, and the moon hung higher, round and luminous, like a lantern suspended over the sleeping valley. The world felt softer, quieter, as though the valley itself was holding its breath. Even the river nearby whispered now, its song gentler, slower, like it too was drowsy and content. I rose slowly, brushing the dew from my sleeves. Each blade of grass sparkled faintly, catching the light like tiny fragments of glass. A faint, silvery path wound along the meadow's edge, and though I couldn't see where it led, I felt drawn to follow. With each step, the night seemed to deepen. The forest returned, tall silhouettes of cedar and pine, their tops shrouded in thin fog. The air here smelled faintly of rain and moss, and beneath that, something sweeter, like wild mint or damp wood. There was no rush in my steps. I simply walked, listening to the quiet rhythm of my breath and the crunch of twigs beneath my boots. Every few minutes, a small sound would rise from the dark, a distant splash from the river, the flutter of wings, the faint sigh of wind through branches. But none of it felt lonely. If anything, the night felt alive, gentle, watchful, and welcoming in its silence. After a while, the path curved again and led me toward a soft sound, a low, constant murmur. At first, I thought it was the wind, but as I drew closer, I recognized it, the voice of a waterfall. Soon the trees thinned, and there it was, a narrow cascade tumbling down a dark rock face, its water shining silver under the moonlight. It wasn't large, not like the famous Yosemite Falls, but it had a quiet grace to it. The water didn't roar. It whispered, like someone reciting poetry in another language. I stood for a while just listening. There's something deeply soothing about the sound of falling water, the way it never quite repeats, always changing, always familiar. I sat down on a smooth stone near the pool at its base and dipped my fingers into the water. It was cold, shockingly cold, but clean and alive. The ripples spread outward in perfect circles, catching the moonlight in tiny, moving sparks. It was here, by the waterfall, that I began to feel something strange, not frightening, just different. The mist that rose from the pool seemed to shimmer faintly, as though it carried light within it. And for the briefest moment, I thought I saw shapes within it, soft outlines, like figures dancing slowly through the vapor. It could have been imagination, or perhaps the play of moonlight. But in that half-dreaming state, it felt real enough to make me pause. The mist swirled upward, and I heard a sound, a faint bell, so small and distant, it could have been a memory instead of a noise. The air tingled like the moment before snowfall. And then, silence. I blinked, and the light faded. The mist thinned, returning to ordinary moonlit fog. For a while, I just sat there, watching the waterfall continue its endless descent. It struck me that maybe this valley held more than just beauty. Maybe it held memory, echoes of all who had come before. Travelers, wanderers, dreamers, each leaving behind a breath, a thought, a moment of stillness that the land had kept. I thought of how ancient this place was, carved by ice, shaped by time, 1,000 storms and seasons. And yet here I was, a single heartbeat passing through its eternity. I closed my eyes again, and the sound of water became everything. It filled my chest, my mind, my breath. It was the same rhythm as the river before, that slow, unending current, and it seemed to say, you don't have to move so quickly. You can rest. You can drift. I let that message sink in like warmth, spreading through cold hands. For a long time, I stayed there, feeling as though the valley itself was cradling me in its stillness. Eventually, I stood and looked up once more. The moon had climbed higher, and the mist around the waterfall glowed faintly again. No spirits this time, just light and breath. But it was enough. It was beautiful. As I turned to walk back toward the trees, a soft breeze moved through the branches, and for a moment, it sounded almost like a voice whispering a gentle goodnight. I smiled and whispered back, "Good night." Then I continued deeper into the valley, the path glowing faintly under the moon, each step leading me further into the dream. The path carried me onward through the forest, its turns gentle, its light dim and drowsy. I could feel the hush of the world deepening, a kind of sacred quiet that only arrives after midnight, when even the wind begins to sleep. The air grew cooler, and I pulled my jacket a little closer. A faint silver mist trailed along the ground, weaving between roots and stones like breath. Above me, the moon had drifted west, casting long, soft shadows through the pines. I walked slowly, barely making a sound. It felt as though every step mattered, as though the valley could hear me. And yet, instead of tension, there was peace in that awareness, a sense that I belonged to this stillness, just as the stars belong to the sky. After some time, the trees opened again, revealing a wide clearing edged by low ferns and tall grass. At its center ran a narrow ribbon of water, a quiet offshoot of the river, gliding through the meadow with the gentlest ripple. The surface caught the moonlight perfectly, so it looked like liquid glass, a mirror laid across the earth. I found a smooth rock near the bank and sat down. The night pressed close, not heavy, but comforting. The kind of stillness that holds you, that lets your mind loosen and wander freely. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called. 3 soft notes that echoed through the forest, then faded. Beyond that, nothing moved. Only the slow sound of my own breathing and the soft pulse of the stream beside me. I tilted my head back, and the sky unfolded above me, vast, black blue, and endless. The stars were impossibly bright here, far from cities and noise. They seemed closer, as if I reached out far enough, I might touch them. The Milky Way stretched clear across the heavens, a river of light mirroring the real one below. And for the first time in a long while, I felt completely weightless. It's strange how, beneath the stars, time feels different. You stop thinking in hours or minutes. You start thinking in breaths, in heartbeats, in the gentle rise and fall of your chest. I thought of how many travelers must have stood here in centuries before me. Native tribes, early wanderers, quiet poets, lost souls, each staring at this same sky, each marveling at the same feeling of smallness and wonder. And I realized something beautiful. Even though we are all brief visitors in this world, we share the same stars, the same air, the same quiet that hums at the edge of sleep. A faint wind brushed through the meadow, making the tall grass sway in waves. It sounded like a sigh, the earth exhaling. I closed my eyes again, letting that sound carry me. In my mind, I drifted, floating gently, weightless as a leaf in a current. For a moment, I wasn't just in Yosemite. I was Yosemite. The stone, the river, the air, the stars. All of it moved through me, and I through it. A quiet unity, a stillness too vast for words. Then, slowly, the feeling softened, and I was simply myself again. A traveler sitting alone beneath a starry sky, wrapped in peace. Somewhere nearby, a small light flickered, the soft glow of a lantern, left by some other wanderer, perhaps resting at a camp nearby. It was faint but steady, and for some reason, it made me smile. It reminded me that even in solitude, we're never truly alone. There are always others out there, sharing the same quiet, the same sky, the same slow journey towards sleep. The sound of the river lulled me back into a soft haze. The stars blurred slightly, and my thoughts began to stretch, longer, slower, like a dream forming from the edges of awareness. I lay back on the cool grass, my head resting on my folded arms. The scent of pine and damp earth filled my lungs. I felt myself sinking, not falling, but floating downward into something safe. If sleep could have a sound, it would be this: the hush of night, the trickle of the stream, and the faraway sigh of wind through trees. I smiled softly to myself and whispered a quiet thought into the dark. Thank you, Yosemite. And in that moment, a single star shot across the sky, a silver streak, here and gone in an instant. It felt like an answer. When I woke, the world was quiet, that delicate stillness that lives between night and day. The stars had faded, their shimmer slowly giving way to the pale breath of dawn. For a few seconds, I didn't move. I stayed there, lying on the cool grass, wrapped in the soft scent of pine and earth, listening to the silence that hums like a heartbeat just before morning begins. The river still murmured beside me, its rhythm constant, patient, as if whispering that everything was unfolding exactly as it should. A faint mist hovered over the surface, catching the first hints of sunlight like strands of gold. I sat up slowly, my body feeling light, my thoughts slow and quiet, as if part of me were still dreaming. The forest around me was touched by gentle light now, the kind that doesn't rush in, but eases softly into the world. The granite cliffs ahead glowed faintly pink and silver. Birdsong began in the distance, just one, then another, then a chorus of tiny voices rising through the trees. It was as if the valley itself was waking, stretching, breathing, coming alive again. I stood and walked toward the riverbank. The air was cool against my face, and I could feel the faint warmth of sunlight brushing across my hands. Each step felt unhurried, grounded. I watched my reflection ripple on the water, a quiet traveler in a quiet world. Somewhere deep within, I felt an old peace return, the kind that hides beneath the noise of daily life, waiting patiently to be remembered. It wasn't something loud or grand, but something small and certain, like the steady beat of a heart. I thought of everything this night had given me: the hush of dusk, the music of the forest, the endless starlit sky. And I felt grateful. Grateful for stillness, for beauty, for the quiet miracle of being alive. The sun rose a little higher now, turning the mist into glowing ribbons that drifted through the trees. Each ray of light looked like it carried a story, one told by the valley itself, in the language of wind and water and time. As I watched, I realized something simple but clear, that peace doesn't always come from finding answers. Sometimes it's just about being still enough to notice the world breathing beside you. I closed my eyes once more, just listening to the stream, to the birds, to the faint rustle of the leaves above me. Each sound layered softly upon the other, until it became something like a lullaby, the valley singing itself awake. If I could have stayed there forever, I think I would have. But even as the sun warmed my face, I knew it was time to go. So I took one last deep breath and whispered a quiet goodbye to Yosemite, a promise that I'd return, if only in dreams. And as I began to walk back down the trail, I felt lighter somehow, as though the night had taken a little of the world's heaviness away. Each step seemed softer than the last, and each moment a little slower. By the time I reached the road, the day had begun, but inside me, it was still night, still calm, still infinite. The sound of the river faded behind me, and for a while, I simply walked, the quiet rhythm of my footsteps blending with the gentle song of morning. Everything shimmered with dew, tiny diamonds scattered across grass and leaves. And as I passed through the last bend of the forest, the first golden beam of sunlight spilled across my path, warm and pure. It touched my hands, and I smiled, not because something had happened, but because nothing needed to. The world was enough. The morning was enough. And this quiet heart inside me, that was enough too. And now, as this gentle journey through Yosemite Valley comes to a close, I invite you to rest. Let the soft light of morning carry you deeper into stillness. Let the last echoes of the river become your lullaby. If you're still awake, thank you for sharing this peaceful moment with me. Don't forget to subscribe to Sleepy Travel Tailies for more soothing bedtime journeys around the world. And tell us in the comments, where would you like to dream travel next? For now, just breathe in softly, exhale slowly, and drift into calm, into quiet, into sleep.